Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is KJ speaking, and today I'm super excited to share with you guys how to write a paragraph in IELTS writing task 2. Today's topic is personal viewpoint, which I'm gonna focus on advantage or disadvantage. So now let's begin. To begin with, let's have a quick look at the action plan. There are 3 steps to follow. Step 1, task analysis. Step 2, outlining. Step 3, writing. All of these steps I'm gonna detail one by one later. So now let's move on. Now let's move to the action plan. As previously mentioned, there are 3 steps to follow. First and foremost is step 1, task analysis, which is the pre-writing stage. Let's have a look at the exercise. For subject or question, it's about museum ticketing. Next is type of essay. It's a personal viewpoint essay. After that, in terms of question, it's about advantage or disadvantage. Then regarding the stand, I think advantage outweighs disadvantage. Finally, the summary section is required the opinion. Alright, let's proceed to the next step. Step 2, outlining. There are 3 crucial items here: introduction, idea, and summary. First of all, introduction. In the introduction, you should include 2 things. 1, you should include the paraphrase of the prompt question. 2, you should include your stand after the paraphrase. Turning to idea, there are 3 scenarios here. 1, if you think that advantage outweighs disadvantage, you should list down 3 advantages with clear explanation and example. After that, you should include at least 1 big disadvantage and reject them later to prove that you consider both sides of the issue. 2, if you think that disadvantage outweighs advantage, you should list down 3 disadvantages with clear explanation and example. Then you should include at least 1 big advantage and reject them later to prove that you consider both sides of the issue. 3, if you partially think that advantage outweighs disadvantage, you may present both sides clearly and tell why you think both are reasonable. Finally, summary. In a personal viewpoint essay, it's a must to include your opinion in a summary section. Step 3, writing. Here I divided writing tasks into 3 sections: introduction, idea, and summary. First, let's begin with the introduction. To utilize time efficiently, your introduction should be merely a paraphrase of the question and your stand on the issue. Let's learn how to write a straightforward introduction altogether. The question is, many museums charge for admission, while others are free. Do you think the advantage of charging people for admission outweighs the disadvantage? So how did I write the introduction? I wrote my introduction as recently, on the one hand, plentiful museums I require entry fee. On the other hand, others offer a more generous gesture with no charge. Personally, I firmly approve reversal charging outstrip its drawback, which I will explain in the essay. As you see in first sentence, I paraphrase the question. Then in the second sentence, I stated my stand clearly that I think the advantages of charging museum entry outweigh the disadvantage. One takeaway from this section is remember to include both paraphrase and your stand on the issue in the introduction. Next, idea. Ideas are a core section of the essay. Here are some strategies to write a convincing personal viewpoint essay when you think that advantage outweighs disadvantage. First, you should include 3 advantages, and each point should be well explained with concrete example. In the exercise, I raised 3 main advantages. Advantage 1 is reserve fund. This is because it can keep the museum function in case of emergency. Some obvious examples are maintenance, operating costs, staff salary, equipment, and so on. Advantage 2 is fund other program. The reason for this is that it helps fund other programs that obtain insufficient funding from the government. The example can be seen in the case of the third world. Advantage 3 is contribution. The reason is that it demonstrates some contribution from visitors. One clear example is the case of zoo. Second, you should include one or two weak disadvantages and then reject them later to prove that you consider both sides of the issue. In the exercise, I raised two main disadvantages. Disadvantage 1 is affect the disadvantage. This is because not all people afford to pay for museum tickets, as you can see the case of children, students, senior, and disabled. Disadvantage 2 is ticketing method. The reason for this is that it is too commercial. The examples are advanced ticketing, VIP, online ticketing, discrimination, and online fraud. One takeaway from this section is remember to include three main advantages and at least one weak disadvantage and reject them later. The first advantage is reserve fund. Let's have a look at my example. As you see, I firstly introduce the idea by simply using a clear opening, perhaps the first row was benefit. This is such a clear message to guide the reader what I was about to introduce. Then I began to explain why ticket sales may help the museum to survive temporarily during some unexpected event. What even more convincing is the example. I raised some example of costs involved that revenue from sale can be used to finance. Three takeaways from this section are 1. Introduce the idea with clear opening. 2. Explain the idea. 3. Include example to show clear evidence to the reader. The second advantage is fund other program. Similar to the previous idea, I click on the description with an opening, another significant, to guide the reader to move to the next advantage. Then I explain why this idea may work to sustain other conservation projects. To do this, I write the example of the third world, where many conservation projects are frequently postponed due to lacking financial support. Remarkably, the sentence structure here is relatively sophisticated with a long, complex sentence. One takeaway from this section is remember to write a more complex yet understandable sentence. The third advantage is contribution. I started the idea with a sentence connector, finally, to inform the reader that it's the last point of my positive side of the issue. Then I made the point that visitors may contribute to the conservation project through their ticket purchase, as zoo-goers do. The first disadvantage is affect the disadvantage. I kick out the idea with an opening. I do understand that to inform the reader that I was aware of other two disadvantages resulted from ticket sale. After that, I write the first disadvantage by simply using a sentence connector firstly. Then, I explain why some people may think this is a major negative impact on certain groups of people. The second disadvantage is ticketing method. I kick out the idea with sentence connector, secondly, to inform the reader that it is the second disadvantage. Then I continue to recant this idea and the previous one by claiming that as museums are state-owned institutions, no commercialization is allowed, and they generally offer preferential ticket policy for disadvantage. One interesting lesson learned here is an abundance of advanced vocabulary. Finally, the last part of essay writing is a summary section. I firstly kick off a summary writing by using a sentence connector to sum up, to signal the reader that in the final section of the writing. Then I included my opinion that charging fee for museum entry has far more benefit for the internal uses, but not for personal or commercial gain. In a personal viewpoint essay, opinion is a must in a summary section, so please include your opinion. If not, you will lose marks. One takeaway from this section is, when dealing with a personal viewpoint essay, please remember to include your opinion into the summary section. Okay, now let's have a look at my full-length writing sample. Please pause the video to read it and identify how I approach this task effectively. Well, now time to recap all the takeaway from this video. First task response. 1. Remember that this is a personal viewpoint essay, so please give your stand clearly in the introduction with detailed idea in the body section. 2. Your summary must be your opinion, but not a summary of advantage or disadvantage. 3. Make sure you write at least 250 words. If not, you will lose marks. Second, coherence and cohesion. 1. If you think that advantage outweighs disadvantage, you should list down 3 advantages with clear explanation and example. After that, you should include at least 1 weak disadvantage and reject them later to prove that you consider both sides of the issue. 2. If you think that disadvantage outweighs advantage, you should list down 3 disadvantages with clear explanation and example. Then you should include at least 1 weak advantage and reject them later to prove that you consider both sides of the issue. 3. If you partially think that advantage outweighs disadvantage, you may present both sides clearly and detail why you think both are reasonable. 4. Make sure you employ appropriate sentence connector to link from one idea to another. Third, logical resource. Try to impress examiner with your advanced vocabulary and use them accurately. The following is a list of vocabulary from this practice. For grammatical range and accuracy. 1. Be flexible with time use. 2. Maximize complexity of sentence structure, such as compound, complex, rather than merely simple sentence. Well, now it's come to the end of the section. Thank you so much for watching. See you later.